All right, thank you. So when I was growing up, I'd watch my grandfather drinking, and I just never knew which grandfather I would get every time I saw him, because sometimes he would be the sweetest, most loving and caring person, and other times he would be just angry and scary. And so I never trusted my grandfather, and I could remember distinctly thinking that I'll never be the alcoholic that my grandfather is. And as I was growing up, I realized that I was different from the other boys that I was growing up with. I realized that I had a lot of, I was attracted to both males and females. And so that set me apart from all my other peers. And I realized that that was wrong. That was something that was, looked down at in my community. And I began hating myself. And I had a horribly low self-esteem, and I felt like I didn't deserve anything good because of how I was. And so I spent a lot of years repressing those feelings and trying to pray to God to take them away, because I wanted that normal life. And when I was in high school, I had my first taste of alcohol at a school dance, and it was horrible alcohol, but the effect that it had on me was it gave me a sense of freedom, that sense of connection that I heard of earlier. And all those voices that told me that I wasn't good enough disappeared. And for a couple of moments in my life, I was able to have fun. And right then I knew that this stuff was amazing. And as time went on, I had this dream of myself that I would be one of those guys that had beer in the fridge and a liquor cabinet in his kitchen. And I would go home at the end of the day, have a few beers or have a few drinks, and life would be amazing. I was excited to try all the different kinds of alcohol. So as time went on, I got married, I had a couple kids. I had a house, 2 vehicles in the driveway. I had some good jobs, but my drinking became worse because I was always thinking, if only I would get to a certain point, I'm going to be happy. And I would start drinking, and I would wake up with hangovers. And I tried different ways of drinking, and none of them ever worked because I had to get to that one point, and everything would be okay. And I would be the exception. I'm not the alcoholic. I have 2 vehicles in my driveway. I have a house, I have a wife, I have kids. I can't be an alcoholic. And fast forward to a few years ago, I lost everything. I lost everything. My wife, custody of my kids, the house, my vehicle, everything. I was homeless, and I couldn't keep a job. I was always drinking in excess and hungover. And so I couldn't keep a job at all. And it got to the point where I lost my younger brother to drunk driving. He was driving a snow machine and got into an accident. I had to go and identify his body and then go and tell my parents that their son was dead. So all of these different traumas affected me, and I didn't know how to cope with those feelings. And I always went to alcohol because as long as I kept drinking, I didn't have to think about all those different things. I was only hurting myself. I wasn't hurting anyone else. That's the lie that I kept telling myself. And this one morning, after what I thought was just a one-day binge, which it was 3 days, and I had no recollection of the day in between, I had this moment where I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I was thinking, like, what am I doing to myself? And I was dry heaving into the toilet, and I audibly said, I don't want to die. And I could still hear that today. And so I went to the treatment center in Bethel, and I spoke with a counselor. I was evaluated, and they suggested that I go into residential treatment. And I thought of every reason why I shouldn't, but in the end I did. And because I was ready to get healthy. I wanted to be healthy. And in my 3rd day in, when my head finally cleared up and I got over the sweats and the jitters and the anxiety, I sat down and I wrote this letter to myself, which I refer back to every once in a while. I wrote exactly what got me into treatment. I wrote down exactly how I felt that moment. And then I wrote the kind of life that I wanted to have. And while I was in there, there was a clinician that was big into yoga and meditation and grounding meditation. And there was a few times in treatment where I sat down with my counselor, and she asked me to close my eyes and imagine the safest place on earth. And for me, that's a beach in Hawaii. And she asked me to imagine myself as a little kid. And this image of myself came to my head where I was wearing my favorite jacket and rubber boots, and it was a spring flood on the Kuskokwim. And I saw this little kid with his toothless grin. And I knelt down and I grabbed him and I said, "I love you, everything's gonna be okay." And I felt that same love that I feel for my kids. And I wanted to have that, show that love to myself. And because before that, I didn't know that was even an option. I didn't know that I was allowed to be happy, I was allowed to be healthy. And so that was a turning point. And then as time went on, I worked on my relationship with myself and with others, because I realized that I was codependent. And I relied heavily on things outside of myself to fix me. Because I would pray, God, fix me, fix everything, I don't know how. I would rely on other people to make me feel better, because I didn't know how to do that for myself. So as time went on, I told my story to as many people as I could, because I didn't want to be ashamed anymore. I know that there are a lot of people who are like me, who are different from other normal people. So I wanted to make sure that people knew that there was hope, because if I could do it, then anyone else could. So thank you.